from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent here on a rainy Friday evening in New York City. As always, very excited for tonight's episode. We're going to jump into what it's like to teach blockchain and cryptocurrency to young students who are hungry to learn. Our guest tonight is managing partner at Lightning Capital and an adjunct professor at Baruch College here in New York City, teaching cryptocurrencies and blockchains to the world's youth. I want to introduce you all to Charles Hwang. Charles, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I know you're a very busy man. I appreciate you taking some time out of your Friday night to join me. We've got a lot to talk about today, and we actually have a new segment that we're going to add at the end of the podcast, so stick around for that. Before we jump into anything, I think we got to fix your mic setup here.
Okay.
Just so. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah. That's much better.
Yeah. Here we go. Like that. I know you guys complain about the sound a lot, so I'm going to make sure it's as perfect as can be tonight. So, Charles, you've been teaching at Baruch College. You've been teaching for how long there? How long have you been?
1 semester now.
1 semester. And I want to thank you. Thank you for inviting me to come speak with your class last week. That was a very interesting experience for me. I hope I did okay.
Yeah, I thought you did a great job. The students really enjoyed your talk.
Yeah, that was the first time I've ever talked to a group of students. It felt weird. I don't know if I'm prepared to be a teacher, or I don't know how prepared was I. How prepared did I seem?
I'd say it was a little mixed because you came out and you told them you weren't prepared. So they probably knew from that. But I would say I'll get you back in for another class next semester, get you some more experience. Yeah. And then you'll feel more comfortable with the students.
All right, I like that. Let's try this mic because you're coming in a little weird.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Check, check.
Check, check.
Oh.
Much better?
100 times better.
Okay.
Yeah, I came in unprepared, but it was a good conversation, I feel. It was very give and take, Q&A like. That's the way I like to do it. That's the way I like to do this podcast.
Yeah, what did you think of the students' questions?
I thought they were good. I thought they were very curious, asking really good questions, and like the one thing I was actually very impressed with was how engaged they were. Like there was a lot of eyes on me. There was only a couple students looking at their phone throughout. Like I remember when I was in college, I would not pay attention most of the time, but I think the subject is so captivating that your class in particular must have a high engagement rate.
Oh, for sure. I would say one, it's limited to 30 students, and so when they put this up on the course schedule, it got filled up very quickly, and there was a long wait list.
Yeah.
And I had to deal with the drama of students trying to get into my class. Mm-hmm. And so being at Baruch, it's part of the CUNY system, and it's very bureaucratic. And so there was no way for these students to get in.
Yeah.
So on the first day of class, I try to scare the students in some sense in telling them that this is going to require a lot of work. This is an elective. So if you're not going to take this class seriously, you're not going to come to class on time, then you might as well drop it and give another student a chance who does want to be in here.
Did anybody drop?
No one dropped.
Boss.
Yeah. But people still are showing up late in class. So somehow I got to figure that part out.
You only got 3 weeks left, right? The semester's not...
Yeah, that's true. So I'm trying to figure out for next semester.
Okay.
I want to get the students fully engaged. And Baruch comes from a unique background in the sense that when you think about New York City, Baruch is New York City.
Yeah.
You're talking about immigrants from all walks of life coming to the school, coming from different backgrounds. And a lot of them, I would say majority, are not coming from privileged backgrounds, typical immigrant family. So these are students who are struggling, who maybe their parents don't even speak English, and they're trying to make it in this country, trying to live the American dream.
Yeah, it was a very, very diverse class. It was inspiring to see how engaged they were, how much they wanted to learn. And so how have you structured the class? Like, what's the curriculum been based around? Like, what was the syllabus like? Yeah,
so the syllabus, the way I looked at it is I'm more focused on the business, regulatory, legal aspects of it. Mm-hmm. Not a lawyer, but I could talk on a high level about the regulations and legal aspects of what's going on in this field. I would say that I'm also not a technologist, so I couldn't go into depth of the data structure of how Bitcoin works.
Yeah.
But what I can do is provide a high level explanation of that. And then how does this whole ecosystem work? I think that's very important. And this whole cryptocurrency space is interesting because it has to utilize different parts of your brain.
Yeah.
Right. So you're thinking about economics, you're thinking about game theory, you're thinking about law, right? So you got to be knowledgeable in all different aspects of it, and technology too, right? So the most important part. And this is where it becomes very different than any other major, I would say, that you would pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I totally pursued this, to try to educate students to look at it at different angles and seeing how it all plays out and how is it relevant to them.
Yeah, sort of giving them the tools to learn more about this space.
Exactly. And then I brought in, for people who wanted to learn more in depth on the technology, I brought in guest speakers. I brought in you to talk about Bitcoin, right? But I also brought in Bitcoin core developers, Ethereum core developers. Today we actually had Stuart Haber. I don't know if you know who he is.
Refresh my memory. That name sounds very familiar, though.
So Stuart is mentioned 3 times in the Bitcoin white paper, in the footnotes.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So he's like the inventor. If you want to, I would say you could call him as the inventor of blockchain.
Really?
He didn't call it blockchain at the time, but he had a patent for timestamping. He came up with all these ideas. It's really part of him and some other people early on in the 90s that came up with this idea that eventually it became Bitcoin and blockchain.
So with the proof of work added to the time stamping aspect, that's sort of the novelty of Bitcoin in particular.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
Yeah. So what was Stu saying today? What was that conversation like? I feel like it had to be leaps and bounds more interesting than my conversation.
Well, it's different, right? I would look at it as a different perspective. It was very, very much in the granular details of how data structure works, how Merkle trees work. And so it was good for those students who had much more knowledge about this space, right, in terms of the technical aspects.
Yeah.
Because the challenge I have in this class is it's considered a CIS class, so computer information systems. But what I learned is not every student knows how to develop code. And so some of these students, what they do, well, I should take a step back. Some of these students are not even CIS majors that take my class. They're accounting majors. They're finance majors. And so they're from all different backgrounds. So it's a challenge for me to teach this class because of that. And so when I have to teach game theory, I have to take a step back and teach the fundamentals of game theory, and then how does this tie into this space?
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I've sort of approached it. And for some students, it might be easier when I teach that aspect for those econ majors. But for some, they need that foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what we talk a lot about on this podcast, is just like the breadth of knowledge needed. And I feel like having to put together a syllabus to teach this class was an onerous endeavor.
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. And after teaching it this semester, this is my first semester teaching it, I'm going to revamp the syllabus to make it even better.
Yeah. It's an iterative process, right?
It definitely is.
What do you think you're going to change?
I think I'm going to add some more details from different areas. I haven't really thought this through yet. But even I think when you came in and talked about the history of money, I want to delve into that more.
Yeah.
So people understand that. Because I think one of the issues is I was an econ major in undergrad, and I remember learning about fiat currency. And I never, at that moment, I was like, what are you talking about that US dollars are worthless? Like, that's what my professor was telling us, right? It's like, it's not backed by anything. Like, I knew that concept, but it took me a while to figure out that, oh, wait, the US dollar really is just a piece of paper. And we just believe that it's worth $1. And so since everyone believes that, then it's worth $1. But that was a concept that took me some time to figure out.
It takes everybody some time, right?
Yeah. And then I think but then to leverage that, I think once I discovered Bitcoin, it took me a lot quicker to understand why Bitcoin's valuable.
Right.
But that I needed that foundation there.
Mm-hmm.
And without that foundation, I think it would have taken me a lot longer to understand Bitcoin's valuation.
Yeah, no, I think similar story here. Economics background. I think that helped me understand it a lot quicker than a lot of people. Was because of that fact. So again, like trying to teach a class of engineers economics before you can dive into like the holistic view of cryptocurrencies, again, an onerous task.
Of course, yeah.
I applaud you.
Thank
I applaud
you.
you for doing it.
And I'll say, before I signed up for the class late last year, and then Baruch started a cryptocurrency club. And I went to their first general interest meeting sometime in December, if I remember. It's either November or December. I forget the exact date. And there was so much interest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've never felt like if you walk in there, it's the feeling you get, the buzz of just everyone so excited about this space. And I've never seen that before. Just to take a step back, I am a graduate of Baruch. I went to get my master's accountancy there. That's my sort of connection there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I've been to plenty of clubs at Baruch. I've never felt that buzz before in my life. And it was just a cool vibe. And when I talk to these students, they learn so much faster than I have learned in this space. And when I ask them, how long have you been studying this? They're like 3 months or 2 months. And they just dive deep into it and they get this so much faster.
Yeah, it's I was on the laptop doing some research right now, thinking of a Terrence McKenna quote that came to mind when you said like the feeling in the room that you got when you walked into that cryptocurrency club. Miles Suter, mentioned on this podcast many times in the past, has shared this quote on Twitter. I am looking for it right now. Give me a second here. All right, so here's the quote that you brought to mind when you were talking about the vibe in that room. I don't know how many of you have ever had the privilege of being in a society in a pre-revolutionary situation, but the cafes stay open all night, and there's music in the streets, and you can breathe it, you can feel it, and you know when it's happening. The dominator is being pushed. Like, that's the vibe you get whenever you go to a Bitcoin meeting. Like, we go to the BitDevs meeting here in New York. Like, there's always, like, it's crazy how packed they get and how engaged they are, like, especially BitDevs. That's actually not where we met, but we see each other there a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's always engaging. Everybody's like always like very engaged, and the conversation is always very lively. It feels like we're on the cusp of a revolution. Oh,
for sure. I mean, I'll take a step back, and I traded through the whole .com boom and bust, and I'll think what I think about is, I don't know if you know the history of stock trading. So
a little bit.
So I don't know if you remember, there's something called SOS traders, so small order execution systems.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, this was back in the day. If you think about the 80s, brokers used to rip people off because they could charge $1,000 commission fees.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly these online, what happened was SOS traders came about where these orders, essentially market makers made such large spreads in trades.
Yeah.
And so the rules changed that allows something called SOS traders where they can get best execution. And eventually what happened was there's a guy named Josh Levine who believed that this should be fair for all people.
Mm-hmm.
We should not be ripping people off on commissions.
Yeah.
And so he created something called Island. And for every trade, he only charged $1, right? Regardless of the size. And so it was revolutionary. And this is what changed discount brokers started to come in.
Yeah.
And this is why when we go online to our brokerage systems, we pay like $5 a trade now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before we were paying a couple $100.
Yeah.
And a large percentage of whatever.
What did that do to liquidity with those?
So
fees?
This is interesting,
did
right?
That damper liquidity a lot, or
with the fees?
Well, with the high fees, yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think there wasn't much liquidity. I'm sure the spreads were very wide, right? I was way too young to even know, right?
Yeah.
But what I saw was obviously when trades got cheaper, liquidity increased. Mm-hmm. But eventually there's lots of books that talk about this. This is what eventually led to high frequency trading.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
to the BATS exchange and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With all these different ECNs, electronic communication networks.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find, no one knows what happened to Josh Levine. I used to work at a firm where he worked in one of these offices, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really care about money, right?
What do you mean?
Meaning, like, he could care less how much money he made.
Yeah.
He just wanted to change the world and make the world a fair place.
Yeah.
That was my impression whenever, like, people are talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I feel the buzz when we go to BitDevs, this is exactly what I feel. The ones that come consistently that we see, right?
Yeah.
All the time, they don't care about the money. They want to change the world. At least that's the feeling I get from these guys.
I would concur.
And I should say girls too, right? We have a few women that show up too. But they're not in it. They could care less the Bitcoin price, right? We rarely talk about Bitcoin price.
No, it's always very technical. Jay does an incredible job of moderating.
Exactly.
Keeping everybody on path.
Exactly. And that's where I think, that's why I believe Bitcoin's going to do really well in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have all these people that are dedicating their time to this, and some of them are not even getting paid for it, right? And that's why whenever I hear people hate on Bitcoin, I'm like, you have no idea what's going on in this space. Right? You should just attend a BitDevs meetup, and you'll realize, like, how great this is. Because I love it. I hate following prices. Granted, I do it for a living. Like, I got to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I love it when the Bitcoin price does go down, because now you know who the true diehard Bitcoiners are.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ones that go away, they were just in it for price. They could care less about the technology. And this is what leads, a long-winded way, leads me back to why I decided to teach at Baruch. Because it got to the point where whenever I went to different meetups, people started talking about price alone and not about the technology itself. And I felt my impression was, and it could be incorrect, that people just wanted to get rich quick.
No, I have this very same impression. I stopped going to any other meetup in the city just because of that same problem. Like, you go, these people talk about vaporware, a future promise of technology, and then most of the conversation would shift to the amount of value that could be taken over by the promise of that vaporware that had not been written in the code yet.
That's right, yeah.
And it's like, all right, what are we doing here? And that's why I like the Bitcoin meetups that we go to, is the Bitcoin meetup that we go to here in the city, is because it's always very technical. It's not talking about vaporware. It's talking about things that we talk about pull requests. We go on the Bitcoin or the GitHub.
The GitHub, yeah.
GitHub.org/Bitcoin repository, and look at the pull requests and talk about them, and talk about what would happen if they get implemented. Like, what are the possibilities of them getting implemented, the changes to the protocol that would happen, who's working on them, what people are saying about the pull request. And it's crazy. It's crazy to see this system evolve in real time. Like, that's the beauty of open source technology, is that you get to watch it evolve right in front of your eyes.
Of course, and no one can predict what's going to happen.
No.
Right? And that's why I don't think the debates that are out there are bad, right? It's good. I think it actually helps improve on the protocol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's you gotta vehemently debate all this stuff. I mean, it's because, again, that's one thing I say a lot too, is that nobody has any idea how this is going to pan out. Like, that's the other beauty of this space, is that we're all discovering it together. It's like,
of course, yeah.
There's nobody with perfect information in this space.
There's no way one person's going to be able to bet everything that's going to happen with Bitcoin in the next 10 years.
I would say the next 10 months.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
10 weeks, let alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had Jay in to your class, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What did he talk about when he was in?
Yeah, so he talked about data structure, UTXO, and Lightning Network.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Lightning Network?
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm still mixed about Bitcoin's ultimate use case.
Yeah.
I have theories.
Yeah.
But I don't know what will actually pan out.
What are your theories?
So one theory is, I think it could replace gold altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Like significantly, right? Maybe not completely. I said altogether, but maybe not completely, but a significant portion of gold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a much easier way to move money around.
Yeah.
Because it's borderless, right? If I wanted to move $1 million worth of gold, it'd be very difficult.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't put that in a backpack.
No. But it could put $1 million of Bitcoin in my backpack, right?
You could put it in your brain.
That's right. A brain wallet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you bring up the brain wallet. I always wonder if you actually have the brain wallet and you're going through customs, do you have to declare if you have more than $10,000 worth of Bitcoin?
I think you would be dumb if you did. But
it's just a thought exercise, right?
Right. I don't think you do. Like even if you had like $1 million on a Coinbase account, I don't think you would have to declare that because it's technically on Bitcoin or Coinbase's servers, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. But if it's in a brain wallet, let's say you put it on a hardware and then you put it in cold storage, but you have the brain wallet, do you have to declare it?
Yeah, you'd have to play stupid. Be like, I don't know my private key.
Exactly.
It's written around somewhere. Like, I don't know that.
Yeah.
That is a good one. Like, would you have to declare that? Like, and would they be able to retroactively punish you?
Yeah, because in theory, if you go to another country, you could withdraw the Bitcoin, off-ramp it in that country.
I've done that before.
Okay.
But actually, this is U.S. Virgin Islands, so I didn't cross any border.
All right.
So I didn't go to another country. I went to another part of the world. It's in the U.S. Territory.
Yep.
But yeah, I went on a trip. Spent a little bit too much money the first week. Had a couple more days. This was a few years ago. Had a couple more days on the trip and was strapped for cash. Luckily, had a Coinbase Shift card and had written down a private key in one of my wallets and just spun up a wallet and moved some Bitcoin to my Coinbase account and was able to spend money. That was pretty. That's
pretty cool, actually.
That was an
right?
eye-opening thing. Yeah. I just wrote it down on a piece of paper, put it in my backpack just in case, and then showed up in the country, ran out of money, and was able to produce money basically out of thin air with a few words.
It's pretty smart that you brought that with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Hopefully, you weren't too drunk that you lost the private key.
No, that would have been terrible. But it shows, like, I remember showing my cousin when I was down there, my brother, I forget who it was. I was like, look, like, I'm just going to produce, like, I have some money in a Bitcoin wallet. I'm going to spin up a wallet with these 24 words and move it to my Coinbase account, be able to spend money. Like, that's the beauty of the system.
Man, that is pretty cool. I wish I was there to witness that, right?
Yeah. I do not carry around private keys anymore, so don't try to rob me.
All right.
Yeah, and it's like, and I don't feel it. I feel like people have not grasped the gravity of how innovative that is. Just that fact alone. You can walk around the world with millions of dollars in your head.
Yeah, so like, the thing is, people haven't used it, right? So one of the projects I had in my class was for everyone to get a Bitcoin wallet, and then I moved my Bitcoin to them.
Did you specify a type of wallet?
I didn't. I let them figure that part out.
Yeah.
A lot of them use blockchain's wallet, but I let them decide. Yeah. I put them in groups. They could talk amongst their classmates as to which one they picked.
So blockchain was number one. What was behind it? Anybody use Electrum?
No one used Electrum.
Really?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what was the... I remember blockchain being the top one. I can't remember what was the second one.
That's I would say and you didn't give them any direction.
I gave them nothing.
So damn, blockchain's got some good SEO out there.
Yeah, they're doing well.
Yeah, I don't know how great their wallet is though, but
I haven't used it, so I wouldn't even know.
I've never used it either, and that's because I've been warned not to. But
for what reason?
Just like blockchain doesn't have the best software, and they don't have the best priorities, and I'm pretty sure it's a web wallet, and that's not the best way to secure your Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's for sure.
For $5, it's fine though.
Right.
Yeah.
So I moved $5 around, right? And it was a pretty cool experiment for the students to experience it, to understand how the fees work.
Yeah.
And we did it at a great time, right? The fees were I mean, I think we were paying 5 to 10 cents for this transaction.
Yeah. So these kids were, maybe that $5 was turning some money. Does it keep it in their wallet?
That's right. I don't know. That's what I did point out was, because it's traceable, right?
Yeah.
I just followed how I try to trace it back to how they moved it in, and someone must have bought it from a colleague, and they had a couple Bitcoins. Like, I was like, oh, and I knew who the student was, right? And I said, if you trace the transactions on this, you could tell there's a student here that knows someone that has a significant amount of Bitcoins.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that's another good rabbit hole to dive down, is like the privacy on the block. Like, it's not as private as people think. Like, a lot of people think there's an anonymous currency. It's not. It's completely traceable.
And that's where the media has this all wrong, right? I think they're smart. There are a couple smart reporters that get it, right?
Joe Weisenthal, shout out Joe.
Yeah.
At the Stalwart on Twitter from Bloomberg. He's very knowledgeable on the space, and I think he's got a very level head, and he's very objective and fair.
Yeah. And I would say Lauren Shin, too. Yep. I mean, she's very knowledgeable. She has approached this really well, and she's very fair, too, right? And she'll call out people, right? Like, that's what I love. Like, because there's some reporters, I think, they're afraid of ruffling the feathers, and because they're afraid they won't get the interview again, right? I get it. But she'll call people out if they're not doing something right.
That's what you got to do. And
you do, yeah. That's a great journalist right there when you do that.
Yeah. Or you could go the route of just being like a newsletter rag where you don't care about your reputation. You can call out whoever.
Yeah. That's right. But then there's a fine line where you become a troll.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be a troll.
That's okay.
It's okay. Trolls are necessary to some extent.
Yeah, they are. They keep people in check.
They do. Shout out Kevin Pham. Yeah, no, it's crazy. Well, that's a good topic to jump into right now. Like, Vitalik was calling out CoinDesk this week for linking to a bad Omize or Omize Go,
right?
Like a scam site. It
Yeah.
seemed like a innocuous mistake. Like, it seemed like an honest mistake by the journalist, and it was interesting that Vitalik was calling them out for
that one incident.
For scamming their readers when the network that he's built has scammed people out of hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, the ERC-20 tokens with some of the ICOs. Not all of them.
So
most of them.
What I will say is, like, when it comes to journalists, right, is that when we talk about incentive structures, right, the problem with it is that they're paid by clicks now.
Yeah.
So some of these journalists are not paid well. And so for them to generate the clicks, they have to sensationalize it, and sometimes they'll throw in a little bit of, not factual
hyperbole.
Yeah, hyperbole. Yeah, that's the right word. Hyperbole, just to generate the readership, right?
Yeah.
And so until we change that distribution model, we're going to get more and more fake news.
That's a huge question. Is like, how do we change that distribution model? Is it possible? Do people want to pay for the content they're consuming? It's
that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
And really, that's where, if we could get back to the subscription model, then we'll get much better quality reporting.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just a matter of whether or not people want to pay for it. It seems like people don't. Like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, I don't pay for it.
Exactly. I'm in the same boat, right?
I don't pay for it. Like.
But the thing is, I wonder if we get to the point where the quality improves, will people start paying for it? Or are we all programmed that anything we get on the internet should be free?
Well, I think so. I would argue so. But it's not free, and we're finding that out with Facebook and Google now.
Oh, for sure.
Our data gets sold. Like, it may seem free, but
it's not.
Those companies are capitalizing on our data.
This is why I'm not on Facebook, right? Because I was afraid of that.
Right? How long have you been off Facebook?
I will say I have like a profile, but I keep it just because.
Keep track of birthdays?
Yeah, it's not birthdays, but more events. Yeah. When I was in college, definitely need it, right? When I was in grad school, that was the only way to like know about what events are happening. And then my friends from, other countries, it's the only way they reach out to me.
Yeah.
They rather do that than email.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So this conversation is bringing up one of my favorite quotes from The Sovereign Individual, one of our favorite books on the Tales from the Crypt book club.
I like it.
In a world of artificial reality and instantaneous transmission of everything everywhere, integrity of judgment and the ability to distinguish the true from the false will be even more important. Like, so we're entering an age where readers and viewers of information and content need to be able to judge and discern for themselves what is real and what is not. And that is really hard.
It's very difficult.
You have to be paying like a lot of attention. You have to have a grasp on the whole landscape, all the variables that come into play, the topics that are talked about and written about. And it's going to be hard. Things are going to get weird. Like, we're getting to a point where you can create videos and fake people talking and make it seem as if somebody said something that it was completely not that.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. A student shared a website where all you have to say is hello, and they can mimic the rest of your voice using different words.
What?
Yeah, I have to send this to you.
Oh my God.
The implications of that is freaky, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally make anyone say something and people will think it's real.
Right? So that's where things get really trippy.
Yeah.
Like, you might not be able to know things for certain unless you heard them in person.
Yeah, so it got even, it took me to another paranoid level, because you can have prank callers call in to record your voice to say hello. And then they could
just run with it.
Yeah, run with it. I don't know what they could do with it, but I mean,
fuck.
It's a scary world we live in now.
And it's only going to get it's like beautiful and scary. It's a double-edged sword.
It is.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, we're living in an interesting time.
Yeah. That's the age-old curse. The age-old curse. May you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
No, but it's going to get weird. Like, you're not going to be able to know for certain that something happened unless you saw it in person.
Oh, yeah, for sure, right?
At some point, unless there's some way to cryptographically prove that somebody said something at some point.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, there might be some technology out there that can do that.
To hash that?
Yeah. Interesting.
To hash, the tones of your voice and...
Or maybe you have to have private key management for speaking. Like, you have to sign a private key every time
you
try to speak. Maybe I just found a way to get around this problem there. You only speak when you only speak in audio form. It's confirmed you when you sign a private key.
That is you.
Somehow. Yeah. Interesting. Let's sidebar that. Talk about a potential business venture after the podcast.
For sure. It's like a KYC version, right, of your voice.
Right? Damn. That's some heavy shit, man. Have you ever seen the videos of George Bush, Barack Obama, people mimicking them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's weird.
It is weird.
Things are gonna get hairy. What's the thing you're most paranoid about, outside of this conversation? You said your paranoia went up a little bit. You're paranoid already.
Oh yeah, I mean, paranoid about everything, right? Paranoid about the security of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
I would say, I'm very much, I'm doing this podcast, but very private life, right? I don't want to be in the spotlight.
Yeah, you're not on Twitter.
No, I mean, I have a Twitter account, but I don't tweet out that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of under the radar. Look, I'm trying to, hopefully the way I live is I hope to one day be a positive influence on other people, right? In a way where, hey, I hope to become successful in this world and somehow give back to the world. But I never want the name recognition.
Yeah.
That's sort of the way, sort of anonymous in some ways. Pseudonymous. Be a Satoshi in the philanthropy world.
It's an honorable goal to strive for.
Yeah.
So let's dive more into your background. What were you doing before you dove headfirst into crypto? It's just Tales from the Crypt. We haven't gotten into your tale.
Oh yeah, that's right.
How did you find Bitcoin?
Oh yeah, I could talk about that. And I'll just say shout out to Blake who connected us, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's having a baby soon.
Yeah, Blake and Colleen, congrats.
Yeah, congrats.
Hopefully you guys are listening to this. We'll be on the beach this summer.
All right.
Yeah. Shout out to Blake.
Yeah.
So you worked with Blake at
Ernst & Young.
EY. Yeah.
Yeah, EY. We were in the forensic accounting department. So Blake and I had an interesting project when we were down in Florida. It was during the summer, so I remember that he was going up every weekend to go to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
But we had some good stories from there. That's what I'll say.
And what specifically were you guys doing at EY?
So forensic accounting, looking for fraud, anti-money laundering type of work. So mainly focused on that when I was there. I also did a quick couple months in valuation consultant. So doing valuation work for different companies who had M&A acquisitions, actually mergers and acquisitions, and they were trying to value intangible assets.
Yeah. Okay.
So I did that, and then even before that, before I did that, I was an equity trader, and so I traded through the .com bust, traded through the financial crisis. Eventually, it got a little tougher.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I'll date myself here, and you'll realize how old I actually am.
You don't look like a day over 30.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I would say in 2000, when I started, we had like about 150 traders on the floor. In 5 years, we only had like 20 traders.
They turned into servers.
Yeah. It just got tough, right?
Yeah.
It got significantly tough to make money. Eventually, I would say high frequency in 2008, it happened during the financial crisis that high frequency trading got significantly better.
Yeah.
Improved greatly. I remember when we traded in the early 2000s, we would see bots trading and we'd take full advantage of them.
You'd arb them.
Yeah, for sure. We figured out their strategy, right?
Yeah.
But as over time, they significantly improved. It really just disintermediated my business, right?
Yeah.
What I was doing.
Well, Flash Boys really sort of popped the lid open on what these high freaks were doing. Like, they were able to write algorithms where they could see somebody making a bid, cut them in line, make a bid.
For sure.
A fraction of a penny, smaller or larger, depending on which way they were trading, and basically cut profits. And so these high freaks were basically cutting people in line at the exchanges, cutting cents, fractions of cents off.
That's right. Yeah.
Millions and millions of times, and just making crazy amount of money.
Yeah, it's like is it Office Space where you like just collect fractions of a penny? I mean,
Office
that's my
Space.
image, right?
They had the wrong decimal place though. They got away with it because of the fire, but if the fire didn't happen.
Oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, I mean, it's like just vacuuming up pennies, and those pennies add up to millions of dollars, if not billions, right?
Yeah, getting rich by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah,
it's crazy, but hopefully, I think they've instilled not regulations, but the industry has sort of created competitors for these exchanges that don't let people cut the line.
That's right.
Yeah. That's what Flash Boys was all about. Michael Lewis, another book, added to the book list.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah.
Michael Lewis always does a great job.
Michael Lewis he's like an incredible writer. The way he tells stories, I mean, and his breadth of knowledge too. It's crazy. Like, he wrote Moneyball, Liar's Poker, Big Short. My favorite is Boomerang. I think that's one of his most underrated books, which goes through sort of the aftermath of 08 and goes around the world.
That one's a short one, right?
Yeah, very short, but incredible. Like, the end of the book was like an oh shit moment where he's riding a bike through, I believe, LA or San Francisco with Arnold Schwarzenegger, talking about like the CalPERS like pension fund and how doomed it is, like, in the long run because of how much they're paying, like municipal pensions.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you think about it, we're living longer. So how are they paying that, right? Imagine, my friends and I talk about this because, so I went to inner city school in high school here in New York City.
Yeah.
And so some have gone off to do, blue collar jobs, right? And one of my good friends, we were talking about, he was saying, if when I was 18 and I went to the New York NYPD, I'd be retired soon, right? Like, you work 25 years and you'd be retired. And then, but the thing is, like, how are they able to pay that pension, right? The pension and the medical benefits, eventually it's going to catch up to the cities, and they're not going to have enough money to pay. That's what scares me.
Like, Chicago's going through this, CalPERS is going through this.
Yeah.
Illinois is basically bankrupt. The state's in dire straits financially. And, these pension funds are, for lack of a better word, screwed in the long run. Like, you're depending on an inflow of capital that's not going to be there because people are, millennials, kids my age, are loading themselves up with debt. So, and then they're graduating with a degree that only gets them a job that makes 40, 50K a year. And they're paying off their debt, and there's not enough money to go into these pensions.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And this is where, like, I mean, I may open up another can of worms here. Is like financial literacy is a passion project of mine, where like I don't believe almost any debt is good debt, right? We're sold on this idea that student loans are good debt, right?
Yeah.
But if you go to school and you're paying a buttload of money and you're going to make $40,000-$50,000, you might want to rethink what school you go to.
Yeah, or going to school at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like Peter Thiel's Thiel Fellowship, right? Where like he's encouraging students not to go to school. I don't think it's for everyone. So if you don't qualify, go to school, right? But I would say for some exceptional people, they don't have to go to college anymore. Our times are changing.
Changing rapidly. I mean, this is a topic we touch on every once in a while here, is like, it's not for everybody. It's not.
Oh, it's not, yeah.
Like, so...
And that's why I caution it, because I don't want your listeners to be like, oh, Marty and Charles told me to drop out of college, right?
No,
That's not the message. I mean, not everyone needs to go to college. And I have a friend who's an electrician who does really well. And he never went to college, right?
I came from like a blue-collar suburb of Philly, and a lot of the kids I grew up with and went to middle school with and high school, or not high school, but middle school with, went to trade schools.
Yeah.
And they're doing well.
Yeah.
They own houses. They have a good pension. They have a good steady salary, and they're making good money. Like especially like electricians, plumbers. Like people are like, I don't know why some people look at those jobs as lowly, but they're very well-paying jobs. You're working with your hands. You're doing work that's much needed in this economy, where a lot of society has been pushed towards like this financialized world, where you're making basically gains off of balance sheet movements and stuff like that. So it's good to see sort of the reemergence of, I don't know if there's been a reemergence, but people should think more about trade schools and apprenticeships, especially if you're passionate something like pottery or you like working with your hands. You know?
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like,
no,
I think
that's needed. Like,
oh, yeah, for sure. We need plumbers, electricians, contractors, right? Like, it's a special skill set that if you have it, you won't be out of a job.
Ever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing, like, that's actually one thing I think about a lot, especially here in New York City with them about to start revamping the L. Like, I saw a picture of, it's a picture of the New York subway system, and it basically had, like, marks of the last year that the subways had been upgraded, like, infrastructurally. And most recent is the second half subway on the Upper East Side, finished a year ago, 2 years ago. And then before that, like 1968, 1940s for most lines.
Right.
Like, it's been a while. Like,
and that's why we have so many problems with the subway system these days.
Like,
yeah.
we need to again, like, thinking long term, like, we need to revamp, like, the plumbing of these cities, the major cities.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like, one example I like to bring up of a city that did it well was Chicago was afforded with it was a very extremely unfortunate event, but it afforded them the ability to rethink how they architected the city, which was the Chicago fires.
Yep.
So the city burnt down, and they were like, it was a tragedy, but they were able to be like, all right, so how was the city, like, what could we have improved? What could we improve on in the city? And one thing they instituted that I believe, I mean, it's impossible for New York to institute at this point unless the city burns down, but they instituted alleys, keep the trash off the sidewalks,
right? Yeah,
bring it into the alley. Chicago is one of the cleanest cities I've ever been to in my life.
Yeah, you mean you don't like the trash all lying around with the rats hanging out at the corner?
Oh my God, dude! When I lived on the Upper East Side on 2nd Ave, right across the street from where the 2nd Ave subway was being built, and like at our corner was a 2nd Ave subway to be a stop, and it was where people would put their trash. I shit you not. If you walk past that corner, like after 11:30 at night, there was hundreds, not dozens, hundreds of rats just climbing. Like, it was, and at that point at night, like they're brave. Like they'll they'll walk on the sidewalk and they won't react to you. Like they'll act like they're part of like the flow of the sidewalk.
Well, that's when you know there's something wrong because they don't even react when you look at them.
Right?
I remember seeing a rat that looked at me like, "What are you looking at? Keep moving." Right? They don't run away from you.
No, especially after midnight. There's something where like they just get this bravado. They're like, "Hey,
yeah,
this is my city too."
Exactly. That's a New York City rat for you.
And they're big, man.
Oh, they're massive.
They're big. They scare me. I don't like rats.
Well, when you see thousands of them, it's freaky.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Like my wife didn't believe me, and then one night she was walking home. She was like, "Oh my God, that's the most insane, disgusting thing I've ever seen." We would actually, in the summers, when it was too hot in the apartment, when we would crack the window, we'd actually laugh at people like walking down the street. We'd hear people screaming as rats were jumping out at them.
You should have recorded that and put it on YouTube.
We should have. But like that was like you could literally hear people screaming as they walked down the street because the rats were coming out at them.
Right.
So how do rats?
We got sidetracked, huh?
Yeah, so that'll happen here. The whiskey lets you go down a path. Maybe that's a good segue into like sound money and what I was talking about in your classroom. It'll incentivize very good investment.
Yeah.
So like this is one thing I like to talk about is a reversion to sound money, which I think is a good thing and is needed in this time, will lead to people making more wise investment decisions. Like we're going to invest in infrastructure that's going to last. You know?
Right.
You know, like so one thing in Chicago that always pissed me off is that there was written into the contracts of the city that when they repaired the streets, they would only use mid-grade like gravel because they knew that the streets would get cut up again and they'd have to fix them again year after year after year, basically guaranteeing jobs.
Right.
So a very terrible investment strategy. Like Chicago, if they wanted to fix their streets, and all they have to do is dump a bunch of money and use like a high-grade gravel or cement that would not create potholes year after year after the snow and the salt, blah, blah, blah. So in a world of sound money, I believe that people will make very wise investment decisions where they're only going to part with their Bitcoin when they know that the return on the investment is going to be worthwhile and it's going to last a long time.
Right. I would make the argument that I think the problem is our society will still have both Bitcoin and US dollars, right?
Yeah.
And we're very much a society that we like to spend.
We love conspicuous consumption.
Oh, for sure, right? We love going into debt. We love having the latest gadgets. And that's going to take a cultural shift. Because back to like student loans, right? I would make the argument that student loans is our version of slavery these days. It's indentured servitude, right?
Right. Because you can't get out of them.
Yeah, you can't get out, right? You want to declare bankruptcy, go ahead. You still owe your student loans. And so it forces you to work. And so that's why I think it's going to be hard. Like we need to somehow educate people more on finances. And then they start making sound decisions, even with fiat currency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I hope that we start teaching this more, and people make better decisions with their money.
Well, that's one thing I was almost embarrassed to admit a couple episodes ago, but I've never had a credit card. I'm actually proud of that.
That's good. I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I don't think we need debt, right? Like. And I think you're right. I think if people think about their decisions better,
mm-hmm.
they might not make the purchase that they wanted to purchase right now.
Yeah.
Right?
See these pants I'm wearing?
Yeah.
It's one of two pairs of pants I own.
Nice. Now my question is, how often do you do laundry?
Once a week.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, keep them clean.
Yeah.
They're adorable.
Yeah. Yeah. They look good.
Yeah. It's like the Steve Jobs Zuckerberg. You only need one look.
Yeah, that's right.
You just keep it simple.
Yeah. You don't have to think about it.
They probably had multiple pairs of the same pant, but
right.
I keep it simple. Just
okay.
One. Just one or two.
That works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sorry if anybody in the Barstool offices are getting bored of my attire, but I don't care.
I'm convinced no one will pay attention anyways.
Right?
When I had to wear suits to work, I joked, I was saying that one day I'm going to come in every day with the same suit and no one will notice.
Did you ever do it?
I didn't end up doing it.
I did that in high school. I went to like a prep school in high school, and we had to wear jackets and ties, and every year I'd wear the same
one.
every day.
Yeah.
Just put it in my locker. Wear the same damn jacket.
So what I did do when I had to travel for EY, I only brought 2 suits for the week. So I just keep on changing them, alternating. I don't know if anyone noticed.
One in, one out.
Yeah.
Charles, I thought I saw you wearing that yesterday. Is it the same suit?
Yeah.
No, it's my other one.
It'd be funny if I just bought the same one too.
Yeah. So your experience at EY is a perfect segue into our new segment.
Okay. Perfect.
I think I'm going to call this segment Freak Questions. Freak Questions. So, you freaks out there, I've been getting hit up on Twitter like, hey, we'd like some audience questions addressed on the podcast. And finally, I got the kick in the ass I needed by my good friend, Mr. Rogers, on Twitter. He reached out. He DM'd me and said, hey, I have a couple questions. Would you mind answering them on the podcast? So I think we're going to call this segment Freak Questions. So if you have any questions that you want to send the podcast, send them to martysbent@gmail.com. martysbent@gmail.com. I only use that for my newsletter. So here we go. First question. So how do you see Bitcoin and crypto overcoming the energy demands to be a viable currency?
Yeah, so
We're going to work through this together.
all right. So I think 2 words. Elon Musk.
Yeah?
So part of it, yeah. So I'll say one thing first is that I do think if you think about the way we talked about game theory earlier, the variable cost for any Bitcoin mining operation is electricity.
Yeah.
And so they're incentivized to look for the cheapest electricity. And that happens to be with green energy at this point.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the miners will congregate near those areas. And a lot of those areas have excess capacity for electricity anyways.
Yeah.
So it actually helps our world in some ways because in a sense is they're using that excess capacity that would not be used anyways. So that's part of it. And I don't know what you think about that.
No, so to jump in on that, I completely agree. It's like these miners are going to go find the cheapest electricity to keep their costs low, obviously. And again, that is green energy, but there's also like fossil fuel and dirty energy per se that just gets wasted that is never used. So like for one example, when you're drilling oil and natural gas in Texas, there's a lot of like when you're drilling and pumping the natural gas, there's a lot of like discharge that never gets used. It's just sent into the atmosphere. It's never stored. It's never actually used, but it is expended into the atmosphere. So what I've heard recently is that there's a lot of people in West Texas specifically going to these nat gas farms and basically being like, hey, we'll take that excess nat gas and use it to mine Bitcoin, and we'll pay you a cent a kilowatt or something like that.
Right. And that's great, right? Because now you made it more efficient.
Yeah. You made it more efficient.
There's less waste.
Less waste. Exactly. Less waste. And people are like, oh, it's using dirty energy. It's like that dirty energy was going to be sent into the atmosphere anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you might as well use it for something productive, which is creating one of the most secure financial networks in the history of man.
Right.
And I would argue that that is a what's the word I'm looking for? An admirable endeavor, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of people like to say Bitcoin's destroying the environment. No, it's taking energy that otherwise would have been wasted and putting it towards a productive use, which is creating censorship-resistant peer-to-peer distributed transactions.
Exactly. And so I'll step into the next point that I wanted to make with Elon Musk.
Go for it.
So what I think in the future, if he can execute what he plans to do, is it would be great if Solar City could put solar panels on all our homes, right? Because I heard some people are already mining Bitcoin on their Teslas. So imagine
in Germany.
Yeah. So imagine if he can even integrate the solar panels on the cars. And so every Tesla would have a Bitcoin mining machine. Every home would have a Bitcoin mining machine that has a solar panel, right? this would decentralize the network even more.
Right.
Imagine every U.S. home that has this.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm hoping Elon Musk does this quickly, so we can have a large mining operation in the U.S.
Well, the margins on wind and solar in particular are dropping drastically, right? Like
Yeah.
solar in particular is dropping to the point where it's going to become like very profitable.
Yeah, that's what's great, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, with technology, everything gets cheaper over time.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of time till this happens.
Yeah. So the hardest part is storage, right? Storage
right.
and transportation. So if you have a solar panel on top of your car and you only have to store it on your car and transport it to the miner in your trunk,
Yeah.
Worth
Exactly.
worth it.
Definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Right? That's my future prediction.
All right. So that was free question number 1. We're off to a good start here. I do see it being a viable currency, given the energy demands, and eventually we'll end up with Dyson spheres, taking all the energy from stars in our universe. Second question: is Bitcoin something that will only be successful if it is globally adopted? Can it succeed while fiat is still a large source of transactions? I think there's a place for both to work out.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a place for both. There's no place in my mind where I think Bitcoin's going to replace fiat currency. Fiat currency has its place in the world. There's a part where I think where Bitcoin comes in, it becomes a universal currency.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be great at the point where other countries start to adopt it more. Like Japan has adopted it last year, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't been to Japan since they adopted it, but I think it'll be so cool when I travel to Japan and I never have to convert to the yen.
Yeah.
And I could just use my Bitcoin,
Yeah.
right, to purchase things.
Mm-hmm.
It would make my life so much easier.
Right?
I mean, there's certain countries where I have to deal with the exchange rate. It's a nightmare.
Well, that's what Janie Gack, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, on Twitter. She wrote a great Medium post this week about the currency exchanges in Afghanistan. And basically, when you get off the flight in Afghanistan, you land. There's currency exchangers right outside the gate, like looking to exchange currencies. Like you have to exchange currencies immediately, and Bitcoin would be like an incredible thing to just like be able to get off a plane and not have to do that.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with that. And then also, like, I've seen, like, there's scams in other countries where they try to give you fake currency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, like, you give them, like, a large denomination, and they swap it for a fake one, and then they tell you, oh, you gave me a fake one, and they give it back to you, right? The fake one. They give you the fake one, right? So it's like, now you don't even have to deal with that crap.
Yeah, you can cryptographically prove that your money's real.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think it'll take... I think the key is we got to get more adoption in this,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll take time.
Yeah.
I think I'm in no rush. I don't see this as, it's got to get adopted within the next year or two, right?
No way.
I see this as a couple decades
Mm-hmm.
for this to get eventually really mass adoption, right?
Permeate throughout the world.
Yeah, for sure. And then the UI and UX improves tremendously, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's to the point where I think you've talked about this in other podcasts, in your other podcasts, is that, look, we need our parents to be able to use this.
Yeah.
To send a Bitcoin right now is too cumbersome.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way they're going to do it. They're going to miss a character. It's going to go into no man's land.
Burn it. It's going to go into the abyss.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that needs to get it. It's going to take time. But in the meantime, they can definitely succeed side by side, fiat and crypto.
I definitely think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be surprised if it doesn't.
Yeah. Question number 2 answered. Third free question of the podcast. Can you explain at a basic level what exactly a protocol is for cryptocurrency? Would love to be able to share this with friends if possible. So I think just like defining a protocol. What is a protocol?
Yeah, so the academic answer to this is more of it's the rules or requirements of electronic communications network, right? Yeah. And those rules are generally defined very clearly, but through consensus you can change the rules, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or in some protocols you don't need consensus, right?
No, you just need social consensus.
That's right.
Which is different.
But yeah, I mean that basically governance, it's like business logic, right?
Yeah, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, it's the code that dictates the rules of the system.
Exactly.
And if you're not following the rules of the system, you're out of consensus, and you're not in consensus with the protocol.
That's right.
And it all comes down to consensus. So basically, a protocol is a set of rules that govern what you're allowed and not allowed to do within a protocol, within a network.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
All right, last one here. How do you think the U.S. government and other governments will handle taxation of revenue made from investing in cryptocurrencies? What about anti-money laundering policies? And do you think governments will require some time of reporting from crypto exchanges? Not sure I get the last part of that question, but we'll focus on the first two parts. How do we handle taxation? How are these countries going to handle taxation? And what are they going to do about money laundering policies?
I think I get what the third part is asking, so I'll try to tackle them all.
Okay.
One by one. But I would say, and I think what they mean not by revenues, but by profits, right? Like trading profits.
Yeah.
I would say, look, IRS needs to be clearer on how we can report this, right?
Yeah.
Especially the crypto to crypto transactions.
Yeah.
Can we use LIFO for that, right? Last in, first out.
Yeah.
Ideally, right? Because if you're putting new money into it, you don't want to mark your Bitcoins to the first Bitcoin that you purchase, assuming that you bought it at a very low price, right?
Maybe if you bought it at $20K.
Yeah, then maybe
use FIFO.
Yeah, we'll use FIFO, right? But if you bought it, even a year ago, right, you'd be in the money.
Yeah.
And so I think the IRS just needs to step forward and clarify it. I think there's a part of me that thinks they're extremely busy, right? They probably have way too much work.
Yeah.
And they're probably not paid well, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, government employees.
Yeah, unfortunately, right? So these are things where they need to come forward and either hopefully what I think is categorize cryptocurrency in a new asset class.
I would agree.
Yeah, and create different rules around it. It could leverage off of existing rules, but they need to clarify on it because from people I talk to, right, people do want to pay their taxes.
Yeah.
They just don't know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, they don't want to get taken to the laundromat either.
No, yeah. I mean, for sure, right? And hopefully they approach it the right way, that if they change the rules on us, that they don't retroactively attack people, right?
Yeah.
That it becomes
like a going forward.
That's right.
This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's definitely no clarity. Like some states are treating it as a currency, CFTC as a commodity, SEC as a security. Like it's
they all want a regulator, right?
Yeah.
So they'll call it what they want, so they can put their hands in the pie.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. So let's dive into this. Like, do you think this asset class is definable? Do you think it can be controlled or regulated?
Well, so I don't know if control's the right word, but I think regulation's good. I think when we think about the DAO hack, when we think about bad situations, right, with even, did you see the Save Android ICO where the guy essentially he wrote he on a page after the ICO he raised $50 million, right?
Penis?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
No, that's not the penis one. That's the other one. But like this one, he put a South Park photo up and the words and it's gone.
Oh yeah. He just bounced.
Yeah, but he came up. It was actually a joke. It was a PR stunt, right?
Yeah, he took a picture in like the beaches of Egypt or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Scammed you all.
Yeah, but we need to protect our citizens in some ways, right? To prevent these things from happening. And it sounds like an ICO like Centra, right?
Yeah. Where
it was a complete scam. And so regulation, I don't think is bad. People make it sound like it's terrible, but it's not. Look, they're trying to do their jobs. It's just a hard job that they have. Like, look, I wouldn't want to be in their position because I think it's hard to try to figure out how do you clearly define this for people.
Yeah.
And really think ahead about this, right? Because people will try to find loopholes in the system, and you got to make sure that they don't think that way, right? And there's no loopholes for them to take advantage of.
Yeah. I'm going to give a little pushback here. I'm in favor of light regulation. I mean, it's probably in line with what you think as well.
Yeah.
Because, like, regulation's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean...
Like you said, all these agencies are fighting to define what Bitcoin is so they can regulate it, like, so they can get a piece of the pie. And that's what you have to... that's one thing we have to worry about is regulatory capture. particularly,
Exactly.
which is rampant and a problem that we have in our current economy.
But regulators also think about regulatory arbitrage.
Okay.
Right? I'm convinced they do think about this.
Let's talk about regulatory arbitrage. Can we define it for the freaks out there?
Yeah, so it's the idea that if the regulation in the U.S., I'll use an example, right, to make it easier. If the U.S. decides to ban Bitcoin, let's go through the extreme, then there could be an exodus of talent in the Bitcoin space or crypto space to another country that's friendlier.
Yeah.
Right? And so companies constantly think about this. Like, if the regulations come down hard, then people are going to leave the U.S. And we don't want to lose that talent.
No.
We want to be the forward thinkers of this, right? We want Silicon Valley and, Silicon Alley in New York City to be thriving.
Yeah.
To bring those smartest and brightest people here. And so that's why I think they're going to come to the point where it's going to be lightly regulated, and not heavily regulated.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised about the recent Senate hearings, specifically with the CFTC, because I think they did a really, really good job of being like, hey, this is definitely innovative technology. It's going to change the world. We don't exactly know what it is right now. Let's proceed with caution and not handcuff this industry before it gets off the ground.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll sidetrack a little in that I think in China, right? China banned Bitcoin trading.
Many times.
Yeah, many times. Well, I think they're going to lift it again.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're really smart about this too, right? They know. I think they banned it because they wanted to just stifle the growth a little bit. But they also realized that it went underground.
Yeah.
Like, the citizens are smart, right? They're like, okay, you want to ban it off the exchanges? We'll find another way to trade.
Yeah.
Right? And they figured another way out. Like, WeChat apparently is the app to use to trade Bitcoin right now.
Really?
In China, yeah.
I didn't know that.
And they're trading a significant sum, right?
Really?
Yeah, so I think what they're going to do, and my prediction is sometime this year, is that they're going to lift the ban and they're going to institute all these rules on how they're going to regulate this and how they're going to tax it. Because they want to make sure that the Bitcoins are not leaving China into the U.S. and people are not using it to buy real estate here.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't want capital to leave the country. Yeah.
Well, that's been like a huge problem for China. Like, there's like a lot of, like Vancouver in particular, right? The Vancouver real estate market. A lot of people think it's Chinese nationals hiding their capital in the real estate market in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And other markets, like here in
even in New York City,
New York
right?
City, yeah. Yeah, like that one building.
Time Warner Center?
Yeah, on the edge of the park. Is that?
Time Warner Center.
Yeah. It's like vacant, basically.
Yeah, they said like more than 50% is empty.
Yeah, but it's all bought.
Yeah.
It's just people hiding capital in this building.
Exactly.
That's crazy. Like, life finds a way. Like, these people in general, not these people, I'm sorry. That was very rude of me. People in general are going to find a way to save as much money as possible.
That's right.
I mean, that's why Apple is domiciled in Ireland, right? Or at least they're...
That's right. All their patents are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So all their patents are domiciled in Ireland for the tax benefits. Funds go to the Cayman Islands, Puerto Rico to reap the tax benefits there.
And that's why there's this whole push to reduce the corporate tax rate, right?
Yeah.
So they start moving those assets over here.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit, because a lot of people get pissed at corporations for not paying taxes, but as a capitalist, like, you can't blame them.
No, you can't blame them.
No.
I mean, if you put anyone in that situation where they had a business and they could do that, every person would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you owe it to your shareholders.
Exactly. There's not one person, I think, that would be like, oh, I'll pay more taxes. Because if you're that person, I'm sure the government will take that donation right now.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's like the old saying, like, you're a liberal until you get your first paycheck. Like, I don't like getting taxes taken out of my paycheck. Like,
but I will say, in defense of taxes a little bit, and don't think like I love paying taxes, but look, it pays for the roads, it pays for the schools, right? There's a benefit that we get from it. Not all taxes are bad. I just think sometimes the government doesn't spend it efficiently.
No, I mean, most of it goes towards war and inefficient shit.
Yeah.
See, I think that's the problem. Like Cardi B came came out swinging at the IRS.
Oh,
she
I
wanted
saw
to know
that.
exactly where her taxes were going. That's the thing. It's like I go back and forth. Like I would say I trend towards the least amount of taxes as possible. Ideally none, and you break up into smaller municipalities where you basically pay a fee for certain services. Like I think the government's gotten too big and it's too onerous where it's basically just a huge entity sucking in capital from its citizens and then allocating that money terribly.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with you on all these points. Is that one of the problems also is that no one takes ownership of the dollars that are spent.
Right?
Right. So like, I mean, there's a joke around people I know who try to work with governments, and they say like those are the best government's the best client because they never complain.
Right? They'll just take it. Contractors. It's like when you go to war, the contractors line up.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I wish the government would take more ownership and responsibility of the dollars they're spending.
Right.
Right. And complain when something's broken. Right. Hey, we want a refund or something like that. Right. And we're not doing that.
No.
Because no one takes real ownership of it.
Yeah, because there's no accountability at the end of the day. How do you hold the government accountable? You say vote people in and out, but we're coming to realize that meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah.
You can vote a Democrat, a Republican, a TV reality star, and not much is going to change.
Well, that's why I would love the U.S. dollar to be on the blockchain, because then there'll be more transparency of how our dollars are spent.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if politicians would be in favor of that.
I doubt it.
I probably agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But I encourage, if anyone's listening who's a politician, I would encourage them to push for that, right?
Yeah. And hey, why don't you stop being a psychopath, all right? And that was free questions. That was a good segment. I liked it.
Yeah,
we're gonna keep this up.
All right. Did we get the other parts of that question?
Taxation. Yeah, so we hit that. Anti-money laundering policies. This is something you can talk about. Coming from an auditing background.
Coming from working at EY and AML, I think this is important, right? It's an important point that people don't think about. We definitely don't want to encourage money laundering, right?
No, but let's preface the statement with a report actually came out this week that 0.03% of Bitcoin transactions are used in illicit activity, including money laundering.
I believe that, right?
So the use case is very small right now.
Yeah, I think it happens more with the U.S. dollar, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what people are like. It's going to be used for money laundering. HSBC had teller windows perfectly sized for briefcases filled with cash, the U.S. dollars that Mexican cartels would use to launder money into bank accounts at HSBC.
Yeah, that's right.
And they got a slap on the wrist. Yeah,
see, that's the issue I have, right? Why are these banks just getting away with that?
Right.
And there's a part, when I talked in class about this, we had this discussion that are the banks thinking about this is that we know we're going to get a slap on the wrist. Let's pay the fine and just continue doing it.
Yeah, it's the cost of doing business.
Exactly.
And
no one's going to jail.
No.
Like, if you threaten the CEO of going to jail, maybe he would really consider it, right?
And that's where we get into regulatory capture. Maybe like when you get like too overburdened with regulations, like when the regulations dictate that you get a slap on the wrist for breaking them, like it makes it easy to be a criminal or to do illegal things.
Yeah.
Under the guise of official bank work.
Exactly.
That's what's crazy. It's like, how many times does that have to happen before people completely lose faith in the banks? You know, like they were laundering billions. Like they laundered billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions potentially for these drug cartels. I think they got like a couple $100 million fine.
Right.
It's nothing. Like the profit they made on that deal was like well beyond that fine.
Oh, for sure.
It was basically a tax.
But yeah, it's essentially a tax, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't know how many people really will care in the end. Right? Because we don't realize what the repercussions are for money laundering.
I think people are starting to care because you have people getting sent to jail for pot possession of pot, of a harmless plant. You know, people spending years to decades in prison for holding a small amount of marijuana. and yet these banks, which enabled the grand trade of this product, get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're right because I like to see changes, right?
Yeah.
Where, the media portrays Bitcoin as the one system that all the money launderers are using, which is not accurate.
Not accurate at all.
And yet the banks are facilitating the money launderers, and we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
That's where I think, the fake news in some sense, like the media needs to start reporting this more accurately.
Well, that's what I wrote about today. I was like, we need to get away from the two-party system. We need to get away from our dependence on cable news in particular. Like, we need to be having more conversations. That's why I love Twitter. I fucking pump Twitter so much on this podcast.
But Twitter has its flaws too, I would say.
Definitely does. And nothing's without its flaws. But I believe you have the purest conversations and you get the most signal when you know how to filter and curate your Twitter feed.
So that's the key, right? Filtering it.
Yes, you can curate. Like I like to fancy myself a master curator on Twitter.
I'll have to follow your list then.
You got to follow my list.
All right.
Very good list. A lot of competing views. Look at my crypto list on my Twitter account at Marty Bent. I've been building it for 5 or 6 years now, and I'll kick people off if they're clogging the feed.
Oh, I like that. All right.
Competing views. It's not like just all Bitcoin people. It's Ethereum, other shit coins, altcoin traders.
It's good to listen to everything, right? You got to stay open-minded to this.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. You want as much information, as much signal as possible.
For sure.
Yeah. But I don't think you get that in the mainstream at all. You get what you get a message that they tailor to manipulate you in a certain way, I would argue.
Oh, for sure. And they have their biases, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I teach a lot in my class, is that be careful of what you read.
Yeah.
Because everyone has their bias, and you have to know what it is before you believe them completely. Yeah,
and this is something with the newsletter. I have a bias, but I make that well known.
Right.
Like Marty's Bent. Yeah. Like the name of my newsletter
exactly.
is the inclination of what I like.
Right.
Like the bent of the information that like I find pertinent and what I agree with. It's literally what I found interesting. This is my bias. And what I do with the newsletter is like, hey, this is just how I'm seeing it, and this is how I'm dissecting it in my mind. This is my bias. Mm-hmm. You should have your own, and this is just something, my bias is something for you to riff off of.
Yeah, and everyone has a different filter, right?
Yeah.
And so people don't think that when they're reading something online with, let's say, New York Times or Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
Every journalist is going to have some level of a bias.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to be able to interpret that information correctly. Like one of the things that was pointed out was JP Morgan called Bitcoin a fraud earlier, right? Sometime last year, right?
Yeah.
But he had his own agenda. Did he really believe it was a fraud?
Yeah, Jamie Dimon. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he really thought that, right? I mean, I think the guy's really smart. I think he knew what Bitcoin could do to his business.
Yeah.
So maybe he was trying to shut it down by saying that to see how powerful he is, right?
Not powerful enough, Jamie.
Well, he did help his clients get Bitcoin cheap afterwards. So he wins either way, right?
Yeah, he wins either way.
Yeah.
His daughter owns Bitcoin too, he said.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So.
That's the.
And she probably bought more when it went down after his statements.
As did I.
Yeah.
All right, we're an hour and a half in here.
Wow, that flew by.
Right? It always does.
Yeah.
You want to do one more glass of whiskey? We'll dive into this.
Let's do it.
What are we thinking? What do you want to talk about? Anything on your mind topically that's going on in the space that you want to talk about in particular?
Let me think. I can't think of anything right now. I mean, you had... We have... Is there anything on the list?
We talked about mining.
Yeah.
We talked about your class. Bitcoin.com lawsuit.
I don't even think I know the Bitcoin.com lawsuit. How they're spreading fake news about...
It's not necessarily fake news. So this is one thing, like, I am under the belief that people just need to stop talking about Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin.com. You're just giving them free advertising, basically, at this point. So people are freaking out. For you freaks that don't know, Bitcoin.com is an exchange as well. You can buy Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash there, and they're marketing Bitcoin Cash as Bitcoin. They're saying Bitcoin Cash is the true Bitcoin, and then so BCH is Bitcoin and BTC is Bitcoin Core, which is completely asinine. Like, so there's a huge lawsuit going on. There's a class action lawsuit. People are suing Bitcoin.com and Roger Ver for misleading investors, and I think they have a very good chance of winning this class action lawsuit because people are buying Bitcoin Cash thinking it's Bitcoin and then trying to use it as services, and it's obviously just getting sent to a dead wallet. Like,
yeah.
So
You realize, like, Roger Ver's actually helping all the hodlers because
right?
these Bitcoins get burned.
Well, the Bitcoin Cash gets burned. So these people are going.
Oh, they're buying. So it's actually helping him.
Yeah, they're thinking they're spending Bitcoin, and they're sending Bitcoin and cash to Bitcoin addresses.
The guy's a genius.
He's definitely not dumb.
Yeah. And you know what we could talk about? Because I actually think, I have the mindset that I think Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash will both survive.
Let's dive into it. Why?
Right? Because I think it's going to... So I think that's why there's this push with Roger Ver to try to confuse people, right? Mm-hmm. And to try to get more people on Bitcoin Cash. But I think there is going to be two segments of the population where one will be comfortable using Bitcoin Cash and one will be comfortable using Bitcoin.
Okay.
And it's almost like, I mean, this is not the best comparison, but it's almost like using dollars and euros.
Okay.
Right? Where, for whatever reason, and this is where I think the whole point of educating the public and trying to get people, hey, Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin. If he can convince enough people on that premise, he can get some sort of network effects through that.
But it's illogical and it's wrong, I would argue, because, like, so let's talk about Bitcoin Cash is not Bitcoin. Like, BTC is Bitcoin. Like, then this is, we can get into the branding debate, but I'm talking like purely technical. Like, if you sold Bitcoin Cash, you had to basically create a Bitcoin like when Bitcoin Cash forked off the network, to access that Bitcoin Cash, you had to create a new wallet on a new protocol to access it. And I did not have to do that with my Bitcoin. Like, I did not have to change anything. I did not have to split it. Like, it was my Bitcoin in my wallet. I didn't have to move wallets or anything. To access your Bitcoin Cash, you had to create a Bitcoin Cash wallet and use your previous Bitcoin private key to access it, and it's a completely different coin. Like, logically or semantically, it is a different protocol. It is an altcoin, and trying to overtake the Bitcoin name by brute forcing it over the media is immoral, I would argue.
Right. I think it's definitely a little tricky. Yeah. The way he approaches it, right? And there's definitely some level of customer confusion with it.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, it should not have Bitcoin in its name, right? In some sense. Mm-hmm. But I just wonder, and this is where, like, who knows where this is headed, right?
That's the other thing. Nobody knows.
Right. Yeah, no one really knows. But I do believe there's going to be a place where Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash will both survive. And what I'm talking about is like 10, 20 years out, right? I'm not talking about in the near term, where some people may, for whatever reason, and I can't figure out why people use Litecoin. Right? Like, but there are people that are using it, right? But eventually some of these are going to, majority of these are going to go away, right? I think.
Well, some people believe blockchains never die.
Well, I don't think blockchain will die, but
no, blockchains like altcoin, like as long as
I think these altcoins, I think 95% of them are going to go away. I'm not as much as I know you're very much a Bitcoin maximalist.
Yeah.
I'm of the mindset that I think there's going to be a few that are going to be around. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that number is, but I think they're going to have different use cases for it.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I don't know if I agree completely, but I would agree that there's going to be different use cases. But I think you can do that on different levels, like using Bitcoin as like the protocol that you hash data into. Could be wrong.
No, I think so. I do think, going to BitDevs and seeing what they're doing on Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
There is that possibility.
Yeah.
There is that possibility that, hey, if they move in the right direction, and it doesn't have to be a first mover advantage, they just have to produce a better product.
Yeah.
If they could do that, I think, yes, we might get there, right?
The most important part is the network effect.
Yeah, the network effect is huge, right?
Yeah. Bitcoin's got the best network effect right now by far.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's proven with hash rate.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Bitcoin Bcash is trading at or not trading, is at like a 5 exahash a second.
Right.
And Bitcoin is at like 33.
Oh, for sure. And that makes it the most secure network there is, right?
Yeah.
And we also got to think about that Bitcoin is 9 years old. Ethereum is like 4, right?
Yeah.
And these are, if you want to count Bitcoin Cash, it's really less than a year old, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of these, they have to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy I'll throw out is if we think about, I'll bring the .com bubble again, right?
Okay.
I don't know if you like this analogy, but in terms of some thoughts on this is that if you look at, and I've taught this in class too, and if you look at 99, Barron's had this article called Amazon.bomb. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you could look this online because they still have it. And essentially what it was talking about was how all the retailers in the country are going to disrupt Amazon and realize Amazon at that time was selling books, right?
Yeah.
And Amazon already was talking about their vision of like selling clothes and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's hence the name, the word Amazon, right? That was the idea behind Jeff Bezos.
A little tidbit here I saw today on Twitter. If you invested $10,000 in Amazon's IPO, you'd have $8 billion today.
It's pretty nice ROI.
Very nice ROI.
Yeah. So but I remember in 99, no one really thought Amazon was going to be the powerhouse it is today, right? And that's in 99. So it's about 20 years ago, 19, right, to be precise. But it shows you how long it took for Amazon to be where it is today.
Yeah.
And no one would have predicted it.
No, but I feel like that's the view of Bitcoin right now too. Is a lot of people are like,
yep,
it's going to get overtaken. It's the first iteration. Like there's going to be better ones. Number one, that's not true. Number two, I think going back to network effects and hashing power in particular.
Yeah,
I think Bitcoin's going to win out.
Yeah, that's possible, right? Yeah. I don't completely doubt it. I think that there is definitely that possibility. I like I said, I think that there might be other cryptos that do survive.
Yes.
If they have
I will concede that possibility.
Okay.
I will not say I wholeheartedly believe in it. I will concede it's definitely a possibility.
Okay.
Where can we find out more about you if you'd like to have more found out about you?
So I would say you could check out my Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Crypto Charles H.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to follow me, although I haven't been tweeting that much. I'll admit that. That's probably the easiest way to find me.
Do you have any advice for the freaks out there?
Hodl. Right? That's the best advice I can give to your listeners.
Well, that's that advice has been given out many times on this podcast by many guests. I asked that, and that's been said probably at least 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. Think long term, right? This is 10, 20 years out.
Time preference is key here.
Yeah.
Time preference is key. No more conspicuous consumption.
Don't FOMO.
No. Do not FOMO. Dollar cost average in. Be disciplined.
Yeah.
You can find more about me on Twitter at Marty Bent. Subscribe to my newsletter, Marty's Bent. And if you like this podcast, please rate, subscribe, and share. We could really use the reviews. We could really use some 5-star reviews on iTunes. We're trying to pump it up. All right. Charles, thanks for joining us this week.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was great.
This was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Well, peace and love, freaks.
Not to stumble home. This was awesome, man.
It was fun, dude. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I love this. Yeah.